Hello, my name is Megan Roe, and welcome to the second episode of the Jazz North Gig Rig Run Through. Today I am joined with Chris Sharkey. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
And how are you today? How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. It's quite a nice autumnal, fresh, bright, sunny, cold kind of day. So that's my favorite, really.
Excellent. And whereabouts are you based at the moment?
I'm in Leeds, in East Leeds,
Right.
which is a nice spot. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. And what have you been up to recently?
Well, during the lockdown, I've been releasing a series of albums that have been languishing on the hard drive for a long time, and I thought it would be a good time to reckon with them and deal with them and get them out. So that's the main thing, In with the absence of live performances, obviously, my focus has been, on recording, working with existing recordings and getting them ready to release. And I've had a really good time doing that, and I've learned a lot along the way. So, yeah, trying to make the most out of the situation and improve my skills as a mix engineer and things like that. And I've also done a few recordings too, a few new projects.
Brilliant.
Do you want me to tell you about what's come out this year? Because there's quite a lot. And
Yeah, please do.
I guess the first thing that came out this year was actually not something I released. It was a record that came out on Discus, Martin Archer's amazing label. And that's with a band called the Geordie Approach. Two
Right.
Norwegian musicians, Petter Fadness and Ståle Birkeland, and we've worked together for a long, long time, and we released a record on Martin's label earlier this year. That's called Shields. Um, I as well as playing on that, I mixed that, I'm very happy with the way that came out. We
Right.
recorded it live in Chapel FM, actually in Leeds, when we were in the middle of a UK tour. Yeah, and that was that's a fun one, and I'm playing guitar on that, but also kind of some synth stuff, and Petter's playing saxophone with a lot of effects, and then Ståle's just playing a beautiful drum kit that he used for the tour, and then bought because he loved it so much. Like a gorgeous, I think it's a Beverly kit, a very old '60s, maybe even earlier drum kit, lovely big bass drum, very very deep snare drum. So like the drums have this lovely sound, and we just used the sound of the space, and just the actual initial idea was to kind of do something like Kind of Blue, actually, just kind of using the room, and that's kind of how we did it. We just used the sound of the space and not a lot else, and that was really nice. After that, my own releases. I have a duo with Mark Sanders, the drummer Mark Sanders. I think you saw the first gig we did actually in Gateshead Jazz Festival. You played, in fact. Your band, played first.
That was
Studio
really
Frisco.
intense. That was
Yeah.
very, that was, I remember it vividly because it was just, it shook the room a lot. It was very impactful.
Yeah. Oh, that's glad. I'm glad to hear that. So we released the record called The Orchid and The Wasp, and then the first thing I put out this year was the second album of ours, which is called Lines of Flight, and that was recorded at the Vortex. And that was very very different to the first album. Same kind of concept, but a different sound. And after that, I think just before we were all locked down, I did a gig at Fusebox in Leeds with which is a trio with Pat Thomas and Luke Redden Williams from Roller Trio. Pat Thomas is a fantastic. If people don't know Pat Thomas, go and check out Pat Thomas. Amazing keyboard player, piano player. We did a trio, and then I recorded that, and then I put that out too, and then a couple of duets with the drummer Paul Hessian. Put those out as well. And what's just about to come out is the fourth EP by a band called Shiver, which is the kind of thing I focused on after I did trioVD. After trioVD stopped, I kind of started working with Andy Champion and Joost Hendricks, and that became Shiver. And then we put out 3 EPs a few years back, and so we have a new EP number 4 coming out, which has just been very nicely reviewed in Jazzwise. So pretty pleased about that. And yeah, I'm really happy with the way that turned out. I feel like that record, I kind of it encapsulates how much I've kind of learned over this last year in terms of engineering and things like that. So yeah, so this does relate to rig type stuff, I guess, because we're talking about the manipulation of sound through various means, in order to creatively make things.
Yeah. As a producer role, does it ever scare you how much control you have over the output of someone's music?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's collaborative, so I would say that it's no different really than I wouldn't treat it any differently than how I would if I was improvising with somebody, So when you improvise with someone, you have to sit on that very delicate line between being very open and passive, and then being assertive at the same time. It's a weird paradox about being an improviser.
Yeah.
Being an artist of any kind, I suppose, you have to be open and very fluid about the way you think, but then also when you need to be, you have to be very extremely assertive to make sure that the music keeps moving. And so, I think that I take that philosophy to the production as well. So hopefully through conversations with the artist, there's a shared understanding about what we're trying to achieve with the project, whether that's at the recording stage, or if I'm mixing something, or even if I'm mastering something for somebody. I want to know from the artist what they want from it, so that we agree on an approach before any work gets done, and then we just do the thing that we've agreed to do, and when within that, I would be exercising, my own interpretation of what they are looking to do, and then pushing, taking out in the direction I think it needs to go. And what I would say is, unlike improvising, if the artist came back to me and said that they didn't like the way something had gone, I would have no problem at all in changing it, because I think at the end of the day, when you're a producer, really it's about making sure your client is pleased and excited about the thing that they've got.
Yeah.
And that's just so important. Like, that's everything really. And I know from experience of doing things that haven't turned out that way, how awful it feels when you're not happy with the end result. Mm-hmm. So I just think trying to turn these very difficult negotiations of creativity in relationships and actually getting stuff done, is kind of like, the negotiation of that is really what the job is. I think I lost my train of thought there, but you get what I'm saying. So it's like, you're just trying to make sure that we that everyone just finishes the thing feeling great about what the work is, because otherwise, why are we doing it? And I think that in the past, things like production and mixing, even in studios, have been kind of gate-kept a little. Yeah. So that when you're in a studio, you kind of don't feel like you can ask any questions or ask for something to be turned up. It just feels a bit they're pretty scary places. And engineers sometimes can be spiky and grumpy and, like all people, I suppose. They kind of don't want to be messed with. And I just don't want to be like that at all. I think that I want to try and, just like with improvising or in workshop stuff that I do, I think that demystifying and making, just trying to make the whole thing less intimidating and less frightening for people is really important, so I try and bring that kind of attitude to it. so that we have fun and we try things out, and we're honest with each other, and we don't take things personally. These are all important, and I try and do that with anything that I do, really, because we don't. It's difficult enough being an artist and feeling like you have this fragile, we're so fragile, aren't we, with the things that with our ideas, and it means so much to us. And I just think if you mishandle that, situations can quickly become extremely, unhappy for people. And really, we're in the business of playing music. It's play. We should be playing. And I just try and make it playful as much as I can. But of course, behind the scenes, there's a lot of hard work going on too, and sometimes a lot of head scratching and dead ends and things like that. But trying to keep it in that positive place and keep it in that collaborative place, I think would stop. Getting back to your original question, would stop that feeling that I'm kind of that I've got too much power, or that I'm kind of, or I'm taking something and turning it into something that it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So I want to know, mainly because I'm a super fan, I want to know about what your setup is with Roller Trio, and what you use and why.
Okay, well, the first thing to say about that is that I play bass in that band, or I have played bass in that band, which is, of course, a big decision, and that came. So that's the main thing, really, because I'm a guitarist, really, and but when they asked me to join, I started out doing. They asked me to join originally because they had some shows that Luke couldn't do, and I stepped in and I learned the set, and then we did it, and it was very much, and we played the old material. And then when time came to start thinking about writing some new music, we did some stuff with the guitar, but I just didn't feel like I could express, what I wanted to express on that instrument. With that band, and I just wasn't hearing it. And of course, for me as well, having played in a lineup like that with trioVD, it felt too much to me, like kind of going back to that. And I'm really forward focused. I just, almost kind of like obsessively so, where I just feel, I really don't want, if something starts to feel to me like I'm just doing something I've done before, it's a really horrible feeling to me. And so we had a few conversations about it, and I just said, oh, well, why don't I just, maybe I'll just try the bass. And I borrowed a bass, I think, and I took it to a rehearsal, and we played, and it just immediately felt great. Wow. I just really wanted to be in that space. Sonically in the music, and the bass just did it straight away. And so I bought an incredibly cheap bass for about 60 quid. Wow. And that's the one I've still got, and it's got the same strings on it. And so that kind of, which leads me into another thing that I've got, obviously, about equipment, which is I'm not one of these kind of vintage guitar, boutique gold-plated cables type of person. For me, the instrument, all of it, the instruments and the amplifiers and everything in between, all of those things are just tools to me. They're all just like they're all just the way of getting something. They're just tools that I use to make stuff, and it's the stuff that's important, not the tools, really. So with Roller, what ended up happening with that record and the way we toured it and what the rig was there was the bass, and then I just used a bass amp which was the standard one that you would ask for on any kind of gig. And then pedal wise, it was pretty simple, and I think there was something that gave a little bit of distortion, that just put a bit of grit on the sound. And I used, I think I used some octave effects so I could play an octave lower, and I'd do stuff up high to get, because on the record we went for a very bass heavy sound, and So so I used an octave, a lower octave pedal, and then I think I might have even put in some delay and reverb at the end for bits in the set where I wanted to do some either solo type stuff or to play like super spacey.
Yeah.
So the delay and reverb would have only been on like very occasionally, and the main effect I think was probably just a distortion and an octave. And then, but the real story, I suppose, rig wise about that was was using the laptop on stage, which I was playing the bass, but I was also playing stuff on synths that were on the computer, and then also triggering samples and also triggering stuff that was on track. I generated a click on the laptop for Luke, and he played with in-ears on certain tracks.
Yeah.
So that we could have the album sound really wherever we went.
That's brilliant.
So I was doing so in the set I was sometimes just playing bass, and then I was sometimes playing bass and doing samples, and sometimes I was playing keys. And sometimes I didn't do any live processing, I don't think, but I would basically have on the laptop, I'd use a program called Ableton Live, and I would have everything mapped out there. And I have a couple of very, very cheap MIDI controllers with faders and knobs on it, and that would enable me to, if I wanted to, just to get involved with the sound. So rather than just have the track play, if I wanted to like filter sweep a pad sound, I could do it, and so it felt like, it felt like I was playing a bit rather than just having the track, and the way you would on a pop gig, where like loads of it's track and you're just kind of playing along. And we tried to make it as kind of like, we tried to make it so that it could be different every night if we wanted.
That's really important.
Totally. But to be honest with you, we struggled. We struggled late, like the further in we did, the more shows we did, because when you're an improviser, you don't kind of want to be locked to a click at 170 in your ear. That's a certain kind of way of playing, but like, and if without the click, you'd probably be getting quicker and slowing down, and you'd be having fun with that. And so it did feel, especially for James, I think having the track kind of blaring felt dynamically that things weren't really able to breathe the way that they would if you were just if it was just people playing that stuff. So later on, in fact, the last shows we did before the lockdown, we've just been doing 100% improvised stuff. As a way of trying to kind of like find material for the new record.
Okay.
So we did a load of just completely improvised shows, and what I would do for that would be, I would just have various sound. In between shows, I would just find new sounds and new samples and things, and I wouldn't share them. They wouldn't know what was there, but I'd have the bass and I'd have sounds I could do there, and then on the computer I would have a load of stuff that like. That I could just go into and just trigger a vibe or a thing or a sound or something. And I knew the guys would, it's just about like having these exciting things ready to make the people you're improvising with kind of like excited and go into a new thing. And we had a lot of fun with that. And I would have various synth sounds and, sequences and things like that happening. And I would just get down on the ground and just play it, at that point in the set. And that's where we were going. But obviously that's all been kind of shut down now. So, yeah. So that's the roller thing.
That's brilliant. It's really interesting to hear, because obviously I saw some of that talk, some of that playing, and didn't know what the processes were behind how you'd gotten to that, approach to the performance. So it's really, I'm totally nerding out over it.
Good.
Final question is, what piece of equipment makes you most excited right now?
Okay. Well, it's a funny one, that, because like as I was saying before about this, my kind of like everything is just a tool to me, you know, in order to get something done. And as you can probably tell by me talking about some of the things that I've done this year, is that like each kind of context and each band requires different tools.
Yeah.
And you know, and if I'm improvising with people, I'll think about what I might want to, like the kind of sounds that I want to have available for that particular group of people, and I'll put things together based on that. So, and that process of like, you know, it's a drummer, you know, depending on the gig, a drummer will bring different drums, you know, or they might tune the drums differently, or they'll certainly bring different types of cymbals and a variety of sticks and mallets. And you know, saxophone players are the same, are about mouthpieces and reeds and things like that. So see it as being the same kind of thing, where you choose the right tools that you think are going to, well, for me, like working with improvisers, like I just want to have sounds available that like, if I trigger them or bring them in, it's going to ignite excitement among the people I'm playing with, to make things happen. I'm not even really thinking about like making the guitar sound a certain way. It's really more about the reaction other people are going to have to it when it happens. So I'm quite into these dramatic sounding things. You know, yeah. So, but like just to talk, I mean, the other thing I'm slightly wary of is, and you know, I don't want to be a buzzkill or anything, but like, the kind of, I think there's the sort of a lot of the chat around equipment and stuff can get quite close to a very kind of consumerist kind of thing.
Yeah.
And on YouTube at the minute, it seems like it's a tough one, you know, because like there's not a lot of money in the music industry anymore, and the way a lot of artists I think are getting paid is by essentially working for gear companies and showcasing gear, and like the boom in the boutique pedal market and things like that are really exacerbated by this kind of like this fetishistic almost kind of like attitude towards equipment.
Definitely.
And I think we have to be careful about that, because it kind of, you know, what they don't say this, you know, kind of explicitly, but like essentially that, you know, there's a danger of, oh, if you get this, you're going to be the player that you want to be, you know, like, and it kind of like, and of course that's not true. And like,
you see on YouTube how to sound like Steve Vai, and it's a collection of pedals or something like that.
Yeah. And you know, exactly, and of course it's not even objective because they're being paid by that pedal company to do the demo. So it's a funny time, because like I think you can get, it's, you know, as a young player coming up, you can get caught up in that thing. Yeah. And I think as a younger player myself, I got caught up in that, thinking that if I got this or I got that, it would solve the problems that I thought I had with my own playing.
Yeah.
And really what I really, really wish I had known back then were some fundamental things about the way a certain guitar interacts with a certain kind of amplifier.
Yeah.
And, you know, in order to create a certain kind of sound, and you know, the way, you know, like knowing the difference between a Fender style amplifier and a Marshall style amplifier, and what that's going to do in terms of the way you play is more important than, you know, what pedals you have. Like understanding the way that fundamental relationship works and the sound that it can give you is really the important thing, rather than kind of thinking, oh, if I get this and this and this and this, it's going to end up like that. Yeah. You know, like really understanding what's happening with certain types of distortion or saturation, what's happening in the signal chain, and what's happening to your notes as they're being played. Yeah. Understanding that and the effect that these things have on will make you make better choices in terms of the stuff that you have. Yeah. And it took me ages to figure that out, really. You know, it took me ages. I played Fender amps forever and was unhappy, really, and didn't realize that the sound I was looking for was an amplifier more built like a Marshall, where you're going to have, it's going to essentially distort and compress your sound on the way in and give you a bigger sound and all of that. I just didn't know a lot of that for ages, and without and without that information, I just kind of went around in circles with pedals trying to solve that problem. And what's great now is that if you're interested in that stuff, you can go online and find out really quickly, the difference between these things and listen to them and things like that. And I think that's a really great thing. I don't want to be a total downer about what's happening on YouTube with gear. I think you can learn so much. It's fantastic, and young players now are much more savvy, I think, than I was, because like when I was coming up, the only way you could really hear something would be to go to the shop and try it, and so there's that, and that was it. But so I do think that's really good. I
think it's really valuable though that you're making this point, because there will be plenty of young musicians that are watching this and are thinking, oh, there's a new video out by Andertons, and oh, there's a pedal that I just need, and it's so not about that. It's nice to have toys and things to make you excited about playing, but it's, we should be helping people not jump to those sort of answers is what they think so quickly. So it's really great to hear from you, being in the industry for so long, saying that, it's not about that. So it's really important, I think.
Yeah, I think so. It's not gonna, I think if you're a player, if you've got questions about your sound or the way you're playing, like a pedal ain't gonna fix that. You're better off really thinking about what it is that you want to tackle and really try and delve into what that's going to mean to do it. But saying that, I'm trying to be high and mighty about it. I've done the exact thing that I'm telling people not to do, but hopefully, like, you can learn from my experience that it's kind of a bit of a dead end. It's kind of a bit of a red herring, and it's expensive too, and it's like, it's so I think finding out about things and learning about the way these things work and what they do before you start delving into buying this stuff left, right, and center is a really good thing to do. And what I say to my students is, most people have laptops these days and something like GarageBand or Logic or whatever, and there's some really great virtual amps and pedals and things, and they don't sound exactly like they're a real thing, but they're getting better and better, and they sound closer and closer. And a really good thing to try out is just trying different combinations of virtual instruments, and if you like the green pedal next to the black pedal in front of the gray amplifier, then you can think, okay, well, maybe I need to find those things in real life and see how they are, and I think that's really good too, like to do that experimenting. Find out it's really easy now to find out what your favorite players play, but like, but understanding the way that equipment works and what's doing what will get you closer to, rather than just getting everything and thinking you're going to immediately have that sound. It's like, there's a bit more to it than that. I'm really trying not to avoid your question. I'm going to give you a definitive answer, but like, so you asked what's the thing I'm most excited about at the minute.
Yeah, maybe something that's made you excited to make something new or inspired creatively.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you two answers. And I'll give you the first one because I don't even know what the second one is yet, but I'll start with the first one. So, being a musician who also records and mixes, the thing that I'm the most excited about at the minute is my recording interface that I'm actually talking to you on now. Right. So I have an 8-channel recording interface made by Universal Audio, and it allows me to record in my home or anywhere I want to go, up to 16 channels of music. And the thing that's really great about it is that you can use virtual plugins as you record live. So what that means is that you can basically make this kind of like ultra modern, pristine digital bit of equipment here sound very close to the sound of vintage Neve desks, API desks, EQs, things like that. And for me, that's super exciting because I can track in real time and be creative at the capture stage of recording, which is something I've never been able to do before because I have a bit of a rule around recording. I'm like 100% digital. I don't own any outboard analog equipment or anything like that. I have a rule about that because it's just it's like a bottomless pit of stuff you're going to need, and then that leads to another thing. And I see it happen, and I made a decision a while back that I'm just going to be 100% digital and just do everything in the box. And this really helps. This means that if I did a recording here a few weeks ago with Emil Carlson and Michael Barden, double bass in the next room, drums in here and me in here, plugged straight in, and I recorded everyone the way that you would if you were in a recording studio, i.e. compressing the signal and EQing the signal on the way in and making decisions about the sounds of the instruments before we played. And we all had separate monitor mixes, and it just sounded amazing in the headphones, and we played great, and it was just so enjoyable. And then when we were done and we listened to it back, pushing up the faders and Logic and listening back, it just sounded fantastic straight away. So normally, for me, I do all of that stuff afterwards, but it's so much more fun doing it when you're actually there. And so I'm like, and to make this to pull this back to guitar, what I did is I had a little pedal board down here that I was playing through, and then I went straight into the interface and used a virtual amplifier that I think just sounded absolutely fantastic. And so I'm very excited. And that amplifier, because I am going to mention some actual equipment and their names. So the amplifier I was using was a Friedman 100-watt head virtual amp. Friedman was the name, and that's so really that's a shout out to Universal Audio because they I'm kind of like using a lot of their stuff now at the recording stage, but also when it gets to mix stage, I'm using a lot of their things because I think turning stuff that's kind of quite cleanly digitally recorded into kind of like harmonically rich, satisfying sounds. I'm using a lot of their stuff, including their amp models, which I think they do just sound fantastic. And it's a really exciting time for digital audio. I think the quality now is it's quite absurd how good things sound. So, that's the one thing I'm kind of digging on the production side. I'm so excited about that. And then what about guitar stuff? Shall I be a bit more? So shall I pull up an actual pedal?
You can, you don't worry too much about it. All this conversation is amazing because it's so helpful, and it's all about equipment. It's all about what we want to talk about. So don't worry too much about it being about guitar or whatnot. But if you have something you want to show, then absolutely, would love to.
Well, I mean, I've got the pedal board I've got down there. I've put together because I was. When this thing's finally over, I'm going to be doing some live shows with Anton Eger, who's the drummer from Phronesis, and he put out a record last year on Audition that's fantastic. Everyone should check that out. Called AE. And I was supposed to be on tour with him this autumn and over the summer, but of course that hasn't happened. So I've been learning his music, and I put a pedal board together to try and, because I didn't play on the album, but so I put something together that I think approximates the sounds that are on there, because I want to be able to do that and then add my own thing to it. So and I suppose what's really important for that band. So again, coming back to tools. So it's a very, very produced sound, that record. So and everything is very. It's a great sounding album. Very, very nicely produced. But like most things that you've ever heard on a record, all the sounds on the album are. Well, in fact, any record you've ever heard, every single sound that's on there has been compressed in some way. So there's this word that gets used a lot: compression. It's a thing that audio engineers kind of obsess about. But it's an important thing compression is quite an important thing to have when you're trying to go after certain sounds. And I think for this music, it was important for me to have a compressor that was going to give me a very smooth, clear sound for certain things. The thing is about the guitar is that there's a lot of attack sometimes, and then a lot of sustain. So you get these big peaks, and then very, very quiet in the middle, following the peaks. And what a compressor will do, it will reduce those peaks a little bit, and as a result of that, increase the volume of the quieter stuff. And what that means is that your guitar sound actually kind of sounds like what guitars sound like on a record. Amplifiers will also compress things, but they kind of do it in a different way. So yeah, I've got a compressor pedal down there that I think is very, very important for doing the job. Like without it, it's not gonna sound quite as, I don't know, polished, quite as correct, quite as like the record as it would without it. So for that, but the thing is that like I wouldn't use that pedal on a roller trio gig, and I probably wouldn't use that pedal on an improvised gig, you know. But for this particular thing, it's exactly what's needed. But it's a pedal, and compression as an effect is probably one of the most complex to understand. So it's kind of it's a tricky one, to get your head around. But when used, and I encourage everyone to go out and learn about it and learn about what the terms are in compression, like threshold and ratio and attack and release. It all sounds very complicated, but when used correctly, it can really make the difference between something sounding okay and something sounding great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just going to say my compressor pedal. That's what I'm excited about. And then because you can it doesn't matter which one I've got. There's lots and lots of different ones, and you can it's one of those things where you could probably go out and experiment with, do it inside your computer, and you might find that you get some really interesting results from it.
Definitely. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for talking to me about all of your stuff that you've got going on and your equipment. It's been really, really helpful and really interesting as well.
Glad to hear it.
Excellent. So, hope you have a lovely weekend. Look after yourself, and hopefully we'll be out gigging, and we'll maybe play the same gig again soon.
I hope so. Yeah, that'll be lovely.
All right. I will see you very soon. I'm going to stop the recording. Okay. Bye.
Yeah.